Well, hello everybody, and welcome to the first official interview episode of the Digi-Natural-Nomad Podcast. I'm your host, T3, coming to you live and direct from a beautiful late summer day here in the hills of Montana. So the interview I'm going to share with you today is one I did with a very long time friend and mentor and former tracker, head instructor, and office manager, Mr. Joe Lau of the Phyre Dojo. Now, Joe, as I said, he started coming around the school when I was knee-high to a grasshopper. And since moving on, he went into nursing and emergency medicine. But on the side, he has a place called the Phyre Dojo. And now Joe has taken the art of fire making to the next level because, as you'll see when you hear him talk, it's kind of overwhelming when you think of all the skills and doing them all. So he just decided to pick one and roll with it. And just like him, fire, we share the same common element. To me, fire is very much a living, breathing being. It needs to be fed, breathes, it moves around. And, even though I'm in no way, shape, or form scared of the woods at night, there's an ocean of difference between spending the night around a campfire and spending a night alone in the woods in the dark. So, everyone, let's give a T3 Digital Nomad Podcast welcome to Joe Lau. All right. Hello, everybody. T3 here from Trackalites, T3, the Digi-Natural-Nomad. Under the umbrella corp of Future Nature LLC. I'll be your host today. And today in the studio, we have the magic man, Mr. Joe Lau. He's been a fixture in my life from as far back as I can remember. I used to watch you in awe, at the things you would do when you were far younger and more spry. There's a reason why we keep doing it. And for me personally, it's the miracles. I've seen every skill I teach just about create anything from a micro to a macro miracle in people's lives. But one of the ones I love most and, is watching a student blow their Tinder bundle into flames for the first time. And that look on their face of just sheer joy that they just, oh my God, I just made fire. So welcome, Joe. So why don't you tell us a little bit about how you ended up at Tracker School and how you ended up being especially excited about the skills around fire.
Well, as a young kid, I was a very sick kid, and I was in and out of the hospital when I was young. I was in and out of ICU. My asthma was really bad. And so I had a lot of thoughts as a young kid about life and death. So I kind of, somehow my path kind of got guided over to thoughts of life and death, and which is really morbid for a child to be thinking about. And but I really got fascinated by the natural world and how laws of nature work. And one day, I was in the library, because back then there were only libraries.
I've heard of those things.
If you wanted to get information, if you were thirsty for knowledge. And I came across Tracker and Search in hardcover.
Nice. That's an early one.
Yep. And so I sat down there and started reading Tracker immediately, and which I normally never do. I take my stack of books and I just leave and go. But I sat there and I couldn't help it. I had to start going through it and reading it, and I was really fascinated with it. A couple of years later down the road, I realized that there's these field guides. too on top of that. Like I didn't know that they existed. So I got my field guide, and uh, by then I'm a teenager, and I realized that I could actually attend the school that's listed in the back of the book. So at the ripe old age of 17, like the moment I get my driver's license, I head 45 minutes west from where I live over to uh, Western New Jersey, and I take my first standard class at the ripe old age of 17. So 85. It was August 5th, 1985. Classes started on a Monday back then. They finished on a Sunday. Yeah.
And it was week on, week off, I
It was
believe.
week on, week off. It was pretty brutal, I guess, for you guys. And so while I was there, I met the guy that was making the tracker knife at the time, Ed Lomby. We got together later, and I helped him make a few knives in his shop up in North Jersey. And I met Bear, and I met the instructors that were there at the time, a guy named Rick and Kurt and some people. And the class was like 35 people, but it was an amazing week, right? It was an amazing time. And I became one of those class collectors over the years. I just like worked a job. And if the job wouldn't let me off for a week to go to a tracker school, I would quit. I'll just find another job, which you cannot do today. So kids, listen up. Do not quit your job. Keep your job. Don't do that, no matter what. So that's what I tell my kids now. So for some reason, they couldn't get rid of me. And in 1996, I got hired on as an instructor. And in 97, I kind of got a little elevated to senior instructor, and they brought on Kevin, rest in peace,
Yeah.
As director. And I'm trying to cut it all short.
Yeah.
So 2001.
That was the year I started.
Yeah.
Yeah. You had just transitioned into the office, I think.
I had just transitioned to the office. That fall I started nursing school. And so I started going into the office as assistant manager. And my wife at the time, Raquel, she's still my wife, was manager of the office at the time. So in a way, it was kind of nice. I was already doing administrative work in the field. Like I was doing registration and kind of overseeing the store and things like that while the classes were away from the farm. So I was already like kind of attuned to what the office needed and what the needs were. So it was kind of a smooth transition. So I graduated in 2005 from nursing school, and at that time I'll just say the school went south to South Jersey.
Literally and figuratively.
It just went south. And so I started in the emergency room as a nurse, and so I really loved doing that. I did that for a while, and tracker school was off doing its own thing at that time, whatever that was, while I was starting a family and taking on this new role as a healer, right? And then I had been working night shifts ever since. So from 2005 to 2010, I was doing night shifts in the ER from like 4 p.m. to 4 a.m. almost like 6 nights a week, and 12-hour shifts. And one night, or I should say one morning, because it's like 4:30 in the morning when I get home, I'm looking up at the night sky, which I always do before I walk in the house. I always look for the Big Dipper, just as kind of out of habit. And that night there was a falling star, but there was one that got like really close to like my house, and it was so bright that I actually lost my night vision when it burned out. And while I was standing there looking at that, I was really thinking that I was getting kind of burned out. And like, I really think I need to do something else. So the two things that were on my mind were maybe I should really go into asthma education, because in educating myself more on asthma, I literally saved my own life because I got on the right medication regime where I started to live a normal life again for once, where I didn't have to like take a nebulizer like almost every day. And I would almost forget that I was asthmatic. Maybe I could help other people do that too. But the other thing that was really on my mind was I hadn't done skills in a really long time. And as some of you may or may not know, I was involved in the ninja arts in the Bujikan Dojo. So I had been trained at that point most of my life doing Japanese style martial arts. And I had been thinking for a long time that I'm never going to master all these skills. Like there's just too many. And I realized while I was teaching, I would always gravitate toward the same three skills that I just felt I had a talent at. Like you have to find your talent. And I was really good at stone tool making, primitive cooking, and fire making. So I realized that almost everything that had been said already and how to teach stone tools has already been done. And I'm like, I don't think there really needs to be another stone tool teacher, right? That because and I kind of skipped over that. And then I'm like, primitive cooking is really nice and exciting, but it requires a lot of structures and a lot of setup. And I can't do that. Mm. And I especially can't do that now that somehow we moved into an HOA. And they would probably fine me $100,000 if I had a primitive cooking setup in the backyard.
They're gonna love it when I come visit and pop up my tent and you be like the Clark Griswold, empty tank and you.
Right. Park the RV out front.
I wish I had an RV.
So, but the thing about Friction Fire was there was no central dojo. There was no central place where you could just learn every method on the planet and do every method on the planet. And so therefore, I had to become the teacher that I wanted, that I could not find. So from 2010, Fire Dojo was born. And so I just said, you know what? I'm giving up all other skills except this one. I'm going to master this one. Like, there's a thing in the scout class that is taught, the 7 honors, right? One of the 7 honors is the landmark. So I wanted Fire Dojo to be the landmark of friction fire making. Like, if you want to learn anything and everything there is to know about rubbing sticks together, this is the place to go. That way you don't have to go to that person over there and that person over there and that person over there, travel over there. You can get everything you need to know in one place. And one of the things that I've started to set up for was you could show up and immediately you would be handed a set that works and you can experience it and get a call like immediately because the materials are perfect. The cuts are perfect. It's everything is just ready to go. So that way you would have an understanding of what a perfect set looks like in a sense, because one of the things that I've realized over the years is what I call the lost childhood, right? Which is we as children grew up being driven around in a car. People cooked us food in a kitchen. But when it comes time for you to like drive, when it comes time for you to like cook food, nobody says to you, okay, you got to build a car before you can drive, or you have to build a kitchen, or you have to like make your own pots and pans. So I'm like, well, let's just cut all that out, and like, I'll have like a car ready for you to drive in. I'll have a kitchen ready for you to cook in. So if you wanted to learn friction fire, you just come and you just start making fire. And then if you find that this is something you want to do, you like it, and you want to keep doing it, then we'll transition to you learning how to make all that stuff. It just seems like a logical progression, a logical flow from that point on.
It's
So this year, 2025, I started running workshops where people would show up and everything would be ready. And we had a theme of the month. And we've gone through most of all the methods known from around the world.
So how many is that number? What is that number?
All right. So I get asked that question.
Not counting like I consider like mouth drill and bow drill the same thing.
It's true.
So I'm talking like a unique, you know, uh, something that's not just like a slight variation on another one, like
Right,
the Egyptian bow drill versus the regular bow drill.
right. For example, at tracker school, 500,000 traps that you're given.
Oh, I have illustrations. I'm cataloging them right now, and I'm like,
Right.
why in the hell would you ever build this ramp with a delicate pin when it's just a figure four trap?
Is
It's
it
like
right?
it's just yeah.
That's exactly the key. Like, what is the main principle of that one method?
Yep.
So I call that a family. So if you gather a method around that one principle, it's in that family. So uh, I say there are 9 families of friction fire. So there's hand drill, mouth drill, bow drill, pump drill, toggle drill, gaucho's drill, and those are the 6 drills. And then there's 3 linears. There's fire plow, fire saw, fire thong, and that's 9. So there's variations within the families. So I'm going to say there's 9 families with as many variations as you can come up with.
Where's the fire piston fall in?
See, it doesn't. Not in Fire Dojo. All right, so Fire Dojo focuses on rubbing wood together to make fire.
Mm-hmm.
So everything else, that is wood friction fire.
Yeah.
So then there's the other methods of making fire. So there's fire piston, which is air compression. You have flint and steel, which is percussion. You have a magnifying glass, which is a focused lens. And now you have the Rudiger roll.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Where you take the board and you rub it back and forth.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So I call that fiber friction. Yeah. So fiber friction.
Yeah.
And so those are separate from wood friction.
Yeah.
Fire making. So if there's an umbrella of fire making, all of those fall under fire making, but it doesn't fall under wood friction fire making.
Gotcha.
Which is really what Fire Dojo focuses on, the science and art of wood friction.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
I have all those other methods.
Yeah.
But they're just for show.
Yeah.
Like I don't really bother with them. So because they're just too easy.
Yeah.
Friction fire is a real study in itself. So
late at night, people often ask me what I think about before I fall asleep. I try to get inside the head of the first person that discovered skill A. And Phyre is still the one that I just cannot figure out how, after 2 million, give or take years of us, our early ancestors, finding a place on the landscape where fire was started, most likely by a lightning strike, taking it back to their village, encampment, or whatever cave, and just never letting it go out, because because if it went out, shit. And that also, if you look at our evolutionary chart, when we started cooking our food, our body started to put more available energy into things like brain growth. So you see this spike in brain growth. And so, like, I can easily see something like flint knapping. Somebody's carrying a rock and they drop it and they're like, oh, that looks sharp cut. And they just start with a basic flake. And that skill was also right around that same time period, 2.1 million years old. But I just, the thing I personally love about fire is, and fire making is, if you just learn the bow drill and you just use it as a party trick, right? That's only, you're selling yourself short, because the real magic is going out onto the landscape with your friends for a camping trip, and using the principles of the thumbnail trick to see how dense whatever, that way you don't need to worry too much about what type of trees. And if I can make a dent in my thumbnail with it, chances are it'll be on the medium side, depending on some other factors, of course. And I can create this apparatus that is a functional, one of a kind piece of art, and I can essentially use that to cook a meal and feed myself, and my friends. And that's when the magic really happens, when you start using the skills that we both teach in a very real way, as opposed to a, hey, y'all, watch this way. They really unlock themselves. But so out of all of the techniques that you teach or demonstrate, what is your favorite?
Oh, well, it's like your children. You try not to have a favorite. But let's see. Uh, I can't say I have one. I really can't, because they all perform a different through different functions for different reasons.
Mm-hmm.
So situationally, for example, fire saw, right, is perfect if you're in a bamboo grove, for
Yeah.
example, right? It's like it shouldn't even like,
Yeah.
oh, well, that's the one I'm doing. And it would be much harder to force yourself to try to make a bow drill with them. So I try not to have a favorite, really. The environment, it's like when you're doing stone tool making. The stone is telling you what tool is possible from it, right?
Yeah.
So if you have a piece of sandstone, you're not making a scalpel blade, right? That's not going to happen. I mean, you've got basically a large sandpaper in your hand. Like, that's what you got. You don't have something to skin an animal with.
Yeah. That wouldn't
So
be fun.
I think the materials help guide where your environment, and the materials help guide what the method is probably going to be appropriate.
Yeah.
Which is one of the reasons why back in the beginning, uh, I wanted to learn every method, but then after I learned every method, all methods are not equal. Like, not at all. Like, you can't just say, well, I prefer doing this one method over this other method because I feel like it. It's all situational. So you have to have like all of them if you're going to do this, if you're going to be really good at this skill. You have to have all the methods under your belt. Really. Like, it's like I say this all the time. It's like having one tool in your toolbox. Like you open your toolbox and all you have is a screwdriver,
It's
but you have to hammer a nail. Like it's not the same thing.
not the
It,
tracker knife.
it's yeah. So learning all the methods and what they're capable of in different environments is really important. So uh, I don't think I have a favorite. I think the one that works in the situation I need is my favorite tool, right? So
Yeah, I don't
I'm
think
just
I.
trying to avoid the question, but I think that's
No,
me.
no, no. That's perfect. Yeah, it's the same for me. So, where I was living in Oregon, in fact, I had you send me some hand drill stocks
Yeah,
because I thought, I knew there weren't too many options where I was living, but I knew if I went to a different part of the state, there was goldenrod. And there's a type of goldenrod there called mountain goldenrod, but it gets about this big and
yeah,
like
right,
grows at
right.
odd angles. And mullen, I think mullen is the one flew over the cuckoo's nest material because I have harvested two mullen stalks that are growing right next to each other, same diameter. One is the uh, easiest thing in the world, and the other one you'll never get a cold with it. You blister your hands, and you're like, why? What's happened here? What is this teaching me? And I still have never been able to figure out why two nearly identical size diameter, same space, same fireboard. One you'll get a coal easy, and the other just for some reason, the only thing I can think of is like the density of the woody stock.
Oh, that's really
Um,
key. Yeah,
and then I know, tree branches for hand drill are, possible, but far more difficult than a pithy center
true,
uh,
true.
stock. But yeah, it's and also too with any skill, I'm getting ready to do something I thought I would never do, and that's run an instinctive archery online class
Mm,
because all the skills that we teach, every skill in life, there is a specific technique and form that
mm,
will allow you to use that tool optimally,
that's right.
meaning, with as little effort and energy as possible to accomplish a certain task. Um, and there's always variations, of course, but,
Mm,
with something like archery or throwing stick or fire making, your technique and form is crucial. You can have the most
right.
perfectly made kit,
Training.
but if you don't put in the dirt time to lock
That's
that
right.
technique and form into your muscle memory,
That's right.
you're never going to have full success. And I was working with a student in this class that this is for, who for years had been struggling, and then I sent her a video, and she was like, oh, that's why, because I was holding my leg out over here, my arm over here in space, and I was like, no, that's why it locks in there and locks on your thing. And I always tell people, imagine your upper body is a drill press, just sliding up and down on
That's
your head.
right.
And
Good form.
yeah, it's all about the technique and form. And if you take the time to learn it the right way first, you don't have to go through years of bad habits. That's
Right.
why anytime I do a, private archery stuff, for instance, and somebody will contact me and they'll say, yeah, I've been shooting recurves and longbows my whole life, but I hunt with a compound bow. And I'm like, why?
Sure.
And then they're like, but this year I want to start hunting with the longbow. And
Sure.
I just don't understand why I'm not as good. And I'm like, and I already know why. And I see it when they show up, when one time they draw the bow back to here, and the next time to here, and the third time to here. And I'm like, no, you gotta, do like an 80% pull, 20% push. And, once my middle finger hits the corner of my mouth, I draw,
You
release.
have to anchor.
Yep, just get that anchor point,
That's right.
and by the end of the day, I have them putting 5 arrows into a pie plate at like 10 feet away.
Absolutely.
Because it's once again, you practice these things until the tool truly becomes an extension of your body, and it can be any tool. It can be anything from any of the tools we teach folks to make to a musical instrument. I mean, look at Victor Wooten. I saw him and his brothers play this past February, and they've been playing together for 50 years, and it was a completely improvised set. And you want to talk about the definition of the term masters. Here are these four brothers, each have their own instrument that they are literally, you can't tell where they start and then the instrument ends. It's like they're connected and they're just thinking the notes. And I literally just like sobbed with joy the whole performance because it vibrated every atom of my being. And it, gave me that same feeling like when I, one of my students first has a success with whatever skill I'm teaching and see that light go off, like, aha. Another one for me is cordage. I love it when people finally figure out the reverse wrap and they're like, oh my God, I can't believe it's that easy. And that's, I was dreaded teaching that. But yeah, so I would say though, for me, if I had the time and resources and it wasn't an emergency situation, as far as ease goes, the pump drill, if you know how to make a good one, it can be pretty effortless. And yeah, so I inherited two pump drill kits that I haven't had a chance to reconfigure yet. The angles are a bit off, but they have a good stick.
Right.
And
you need fine tuning.
Now, speaking of the pump drill, where's the first ever documented usage of that?
Oh, I've been asked that before. It's really not clear.
Yeah.
So I think it's some of those things are really lost to history.
Yeah, and it's I mean, they found bow drill kits in King Tut's tomb, along with
Egyptian. Right, they go back as far as Egypt.
Yeah. And then most of the Eastern Woodlands people had used a bow drill or pump drill. One fascinating thing I saw once was a rock. It was basically a rock about the size of your computer opened up, and it was at an angle, and maybe like not a 45, a little less steep. There was a little hole and a little groove, and basically it was for hand drill. And they just put the hand drill in the rock, and the coal would come out the little shipped out groove, and then they just scoop it up. Sure. And I've tried to do that with so many different types of sandstone. And I think here's where I'm finally going to find the right rock, because about 100 yards that way, there's this rock formation. And there's a spot on the second row of boulders where over God knows how many years, there are little finger depressions from where raindrops have dripped off this one rock. And there's another section where puddling has happened. And I just think about, talk about putting things in perspective, like thinking of how long, asking the sacred question about it, how long does it take for rain to like literally wear away stone?
Right.
And it's a friend of mine found a basalt acorn grinding cobble that literally had 4 finger grooves and a thumb groove on the other side. And think about how many generations of people use that one tool, because tools were passed down. The reason why Ishii, turned himself in at that railroad station the one day wasn't because he all of a sudden forgot an entire culture's worth of information about the beings he shared the landscape with. It's because he lost his tools. And some of these tools take hundreds of hours to make. And, that's why I tell people I'm a stickler for tool maintenance. On both on the personal level. I've learned the hard way that if you don't put self-care first, as a tool, I am a teacher. And if I am not well maintained, sharpened, fed, have a hug every once in a while, then my products, i.e. my classes and my students, aren't going to get, the best experience possible. And once I started realizing, that I was shortening my life drastically by working 20 hours a day and not drinking nearly enough water, did things really start to click into place. Yeah, so on this trip, one thing I plan on doing is going and visiting certain reservations and trying to meet with elders to explore some of their region specific skills. That was, but it's like so all of the skills. That's why I teach principles. The way a skill works, so that way you can take those principles and apply them to whatever environment you're in.
Facts.
And with fire making, the peoples who had access to bamboo, oh my goodness, it's like I still remember the first time I went to St. Croix, and that is the only place that I am 100% sure I could walk into the jungle naked and live just fine, because
Right.
there's on the rainforest side, not the desert side, because there's literally 8 different types of fruit all times of year. There's huge prawns in the creek. There's vines. There's bamboo. And you can there's
It's another
rock.
world.
There's rocks you can make stone tools with, and it's like, what
Yeah.
else? What else do you need? You don't need clothes. You just stay out of the sun during the hot part of the day, like the rest of the smart animals. Um, yeah, so that was funny. I had a woman come take a basic survival class from me, and at the start of class, she pulls me aside and she says, "I just wanted to let you know, and I'm not supposed to say anything, but I'm about to be on Naked and Afraid." And I'm like, "Oh, really?" I was like, "Good luck with that." She was, I was like, "Do you know where you're going? I might be able to offer some tips." And she's like, "Yeah, we're going to the Chiricahua region of like Arizona." And I was like, "Yeah. So what you're going to want to do is do nothing at all for about 20 hours a day, and only do your work like before
Right.
sunrise for an hour after, and then, a couple hours before sunset, because otherwise you're just, you know, that's something that's been a hard adaptation for me here, going from living in the rainforest, where today at my old house it's like 67 degrees with 30% humidity and beautiful and sunny. It's 99 here right now, I think.
Which
And
is strange for Montana.
yeah, no, so I'm at 3,355 feet, and I've never been in a place that had such extreme weather changes. My first day here, I had to run a webinar. It was so hot, my computer wouldn't even turn on. And then it will go from 120 degrees to Tornado Alley, and then it'll be 40 degrees and raining for a few days, and then it'll just repeat again. And then the winters get down into the negative 50s. So I will be parting ways from this area, before then, thankfully. But yeah, I'm just now getting to a place where, I've learned everything I've needed to learn from the past couple of years, and I'm ready to truly put it forward. Speaking with it just being my dad's passing of his anniversary. And I lit a very small sacred fire for him after I did uh, the YouTube live stream the other night. And right now, we're in an extreme fire ban here. So,
Oh, worry.
I of course did it in a very safe manner. And I'm not sure where this saying came from, but all of a sudden it was in my head one day, and maybe you can shed some light on this, Joe. And perhaps if neither of us can identify the source, we might be able to make a tidy living with putting it on a shirt. It
Okay.
goes something like, you can build a person a fire and they'll be warm for a little while, or you can light a person on fire and they'll be warm for the rest of their life. So, I always say that during fire safety, because like I said, fire has been a good friend to me, but it's also tried to kill me. And if you look at uh, indigenous peoples that were living in a woodland ecosystem, they were regularly doing controlled burns, and they
Sure.
didn't have the issues with wildfires that we suffer from out here in the
Wow.
West.
Well, they were truly stewards and caretakers of the land. Can't do that now.
Yeah. Fires definitely, we wouldn't be here without our continued use of fire. And I, one thing people don't even realize how central of a role fire still plays in all of our lives, unless you, uh, you know, even if you're using solar energy in a way, electricity. I don't know if it's considered fire, but it can start a fire. Yeah, but there's always going to be a blue flame hidden somewhere, that's heating your house or, cooking your food. And I don't know if I got this from you or Ruth Ann. It's like, at one point, our ancestors at the end of the day would sit around the fire and talk and reason and talk about what needs to be done tomorrow and develop those deep community roots. And then sometime about the 1950s, the campfire was replaced with something else that people sat around and glowed and put off lights, but people sure as hell didn't talk anymore, and that's the television. I think now more than ever, where we live in this age of thought bubbles, where if you don't think or believe the exact same thing I do, then I can't talk to you. And, I realize that truly my only true enemy in life is ignorance. And so that's why, and I'm sure this is a battle you've had to fight, but, getting accused of cultural appropriation when teaching skills that
Well,
were
I
in
haven't.
existence. There's not one skill I teach that wasn't being used far before the accepted
Absolutely.
populating of the Americas.
Just
Um,
all our ancestors,
yeah.
all ancient humans.
Well,
Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter.
well, now they're saying that, at least the latest thing is that like 250,000 years ago, there was a cataclysmic event that possibly wiped out populations to as low as 150,000 individuals worldwide. So 250,000 years in nature time is nothing. So, on the matrilineal side, we can be traced back to one woman, um, and, Genghis Khan, of
Right.
course.
Mitochondrial Eve.
Yeah.
She's called.
Yeah. And,
Yeah.
but if you think, so let's say that did happen, that we are all, how many is it now? 11 billion? I think we're at.
I don't know.
But every single person on this earth today is descended from the best of the best. The people that made it through, that had the skills, that had the, positive mindset to make it through some of the toughest times our planet has ever seen. And now here we are with all these shiny things. And I feel like we're devolving. So that's why, with my work, I love the irony of, you know, taking these high technologies and leading people away from them into the woods.
Fortunately, this is one of the only ways to even find other people,
Yeah.
to even communicate with them.
Yeah.
You know,
Every tool has a good use and a bad use. And the internet is the repository for our shared human experience. But what do most people do with it? They either look at filthy images, buy things online, or become jealous of these curated lives they see on social media.
right?
So,
Like age,
or, only associate with people who
right?
believe exactly the way they do.
Right.
So, I've now got this added burden of not only dispelling the myths and rumors about the skills that we teach, but teaching people how to have these modern things and still lead a very nature centric lifestyle.
Mhm.
And, that's why any of my classes, unless somebody books me for a specific subject, you know, I always start with fire making because it's the hook, right? It's the
Because
thing that, once they see smoke for the first time, especially kids, then it's like it's
especially
on. They'll sit there until they pass out. And yeah, I just the one thing I've learned is that the more I learn about something or the more I practice it, the less I realize I know. And that keeps me humble to the point where I'm always in the place of the student. And, some of my most important teachers have been the mistakes my students have made, mistakes that I never did make. So that's one of the benefits of passing these skills along.
It's called the coaching effect.
Yeah.
So
And
when you're in dojos, well, in martial arts, when you're like a senior student and you start becoming a teacher,
mhm,
right? A good portion of your learning comes from you teaching
yeah.
because there's things that you know, but you haven't yet transmitted. When your brain figures out all the problems and the ways that you have to transmit that information by demonstrating it, show it, explaining it, your education becomes exponential. Like at that point,
Yeah.
so it has a name, the coaching effect.
So,
So I would say when I'm teaching, like
mm,
I'm learning as much as you are, if not in
but
a sense.
my father told me a very interesting thing once when it came to teaching. He said, don't look at your students as a group of individuals. Look at it as a single living organism
Right.
and watch. And over time, you'll develop a sense for when, and basically, he said, imagine it as like a gelatinous blob. And if you're starting to lose attention, the blob will kind of deflate on one side. So you got to change something about what you're doing to get it into that like blob
Mm,
shape, and that's always the model I've gone with. And
gotcha.
just trying to speak from, and that's why usually, you know 2 hours goes by and I have no idea what the hell I just said, but it must have been good because people are like, obviously enjoyed it, and I know I covered the things I meant to talk about.
The
But just,
feedback is really important.
and just like opening up and allowing, the voices of all of our ancestors come through. And if you think about, it's staggering when you think of the lineages behind all the skills we teach, and they're all sacred, and the fact that you're making, one of my funniest things ever, I think it might have been in the Museum of Natural History, and it was like, showed, early farming tools. And I'm like, looking at this one thing, I'm like, that was a bow somebody made that broke at the handle, so they turned it into a digging stick,
Right,
and
sure.
everything was recycled or reused. It's amazing. And because everything needs everything to live. For instance, if I take a branch off the landscape, the life forms that are designed to break that wood down into soil no longer have that one piece. And so that's why anytime I go out and select materials, I always ask first, and I never take more than a third, usually even less, unless it's an invasive species, something that's actively causing damage to the landscape. And, um, it's just fascinating to realize that no one living thing is just one living thing. It is trillions of other living things. Like, we have everything from mites that clean our eyebrows to bacteria and stuff on our skin that keep us safe to our
Or
gut.
in your gut.
Yeah, there's trillions of life forms on us.
Yeah, yeah.
And just like on the face of Earth Mother, there are, we're essentially like every thing is a microcosm of the earth itself. Another funny thing I've seen is I've sat with somebody for an hour trying to help them get the bow drill. No luck. But then a volunteer who just learned it the week before sits down with them, and 5 minutes later, the person's got the coal.
Because they're closer to the problem.
Exactly.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And that's
When you've
why,
been doing stuff for a long time, you forget what it's like to be a beginner.
yeah,
It can be. Yeah.
that's been the only enjoyable thing about being tossed around the country like a chess piece in some messed up Game of Thrones thing is that I've been in so many new environments that in the few minutes I do get to myself here and there, I get to explore. And even though I can view this desert landscape, which is the one I'm least familiar with, through a lifetime of experience, so I know the animals and their habits and their habitats. But what I'm really looking forward to is working on adapting my movement skills. And now that I have this drone that can film me as I'm streaming and or talking, I'm going to be today, hopefully, if the wind doesn't get too strong, after we're done, I'm going to shoot some videos for this week's natural movement class. But yeah, in closing, is there anything else you'd like to say about Phyre? And also give I'm going to give out your information, your website and stuff. Most of the people I think in the class are probably already familiar with you.
Sure.
But it's phyredojo.com, right? Excellent.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. And I look forward to visiting you when I come back, when the ticks are mostly asleep. Awesome, Mr. Joe. Well, do you have any events coming up anytime soon at your dojo or on mine?
We're still doing monthly workshops. So the next one for September is Phyre Thong.
Phyre Thong is amazing.
Hmm.
And so when you do it with bamboo, do you just cut it a lot thinner? Because the difference between rattan and bamboo is the hollowness, right? I mean, they're both grasses.
No, well, rattan is a solid. It's
Yeah.
kind of a root. It's like a root, and then and you're just using the skin of the rattan.
Yeah.
And the bamboo, the thickness of the wall
Mm-hmm.
is really important.
Yeah.
It can't be. If it is too thick, you gotta just get the skin of the bamboo. Yeah, your cuts have to be.
Gotcha.
So, and then in October, we're gonna finish with mouth drill, and then in November we're just gonna have like an informal gathering of just like anything you missed. We might do a giant drill, and just see how it goes. And that's the end of the year. We're not going to have anything in December. And but this was the 2025 was the year of what I call the white belt, because it's a dojo theme, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the white belt is just try to get a coal with every method.
Yeah.
And so next year we're starting green belt, and green belt is we're going to start making every method.
Nice. I like that approach. But thank you so much, Joe.
Always a pleasure.